Hangout, but everybody else can't see your whole screen. They just see the slide area.
Okay, cool. All right, so guys, you know, and you'll be able to write all these down as we go through them, so you don't have to write all 5 of these down on this slide right now. But as I talked about all these, setting the stage, story, struggle, and challenges, journey of discovery, because you're going to be able to get this as we go through. I just talked about this slide, the setting of the stage, all about establishing credibility, context, and meaning. So here's the questions you need to ask yourself. What was the biggest problem for you in your life before you started your business? What did you want to change? And how were you going to do it? And if you didn't know, say in your story, I didn't know how to do this yet. What was the more out of life that you wanted? That's the vague part of like, here's the bigger picture stuff that I want where you're vague. The what did you want to change? The second bullet point there, that's a specific thing. There's a time to be specific so they can have a picture of you, and then you say something vague that then they now start painting pictures of themselves, and they're connecting themselves to you. It's a little Jedi mind trick. So, and obviously we can, you know, go back to those slides there at the end where people can write those down if they need to. So the next part here, guys, is the biggest part and the most important part next to the foundation that you can do. This is where you build your trust. This is where you empathize. This is where everything happens, that if you don't get them here, the rest of the stuff is meaningless because they won't be reading it, okay? And it all starts with, you know, what was the major point or event in your life that was either a crisis or a catalyst for you that you decided to really make a change? What was finally that thing in your life that was like, enough is enough? A lot of you know, like Amy's story, Amy Starr Allen, you guys know, where she said that she brought her daughter into a thrift store and they only had like $3 when she was struggling in the time before she was making any money, just struggling to build her business. And her daughter had to buy the one used pair of shoes in the store in her size, which were boy shoes. And her daughter like didn't even fret, or like she just accepted it because this was her normal life and normal reality. And to Amy, it was like, okay, this is not okay. That's enough. You know, to her, that was like the crisis that was like, I can't ever let this happen again. And so it was something specific. So think about, and there's going to be more than one. There's certain moments that just totally probably got you so pissed off and frustrated. You're like, gosh, I need to change something. So then the next part is, what major challenges, obstacles, or roadblocks did you face in overcoming that? So just think about that for a second. What major challenges, obstacles, or roadblocks? And it could be a myriad of things. It could be that, you know, you didn't have enough money at the end of the month, you know, or that something happened and you had to pay for something that you didn't foresee, and so the money you were going to invest into, you know, changing your life or your business or whatever couldn't happen, or many other things. But remember, there's the roadblocks that you're having to overcome. This is the hero's journey, people, okay? And then there's always the doubters, the naysayers, the people that are like, look, we love you. We don't want to see you hurt. Don't get into one of those things, you know, that's never good. No one never makes any money in those things, you know, that type of, those well-intentioned people. You want to say, hey, this is what my aunt said to me. This is what my cousin or my brother or my sister said to me. You know, this is what my kids said to me. It's like, this is what they said, and I had to persevere through it. You know, you always have to paint the picture of the villains, because the doubters and the naysayers are the villain part of the mind when someone's going through a story, okay? And so then the last part was, what was your defining moment? What was the point where you were like, okay, I got to figure this out, and I got to do this no matter what? And oftentimes we say that with a statement that is like a, you know, when I write my story, I put it in quotes. And it's a first-person statement that says something like, and I said to myself, quote, I've got to find something better than this, end quote. And it's a point where someone reads that and goes, they're saying it to themselves because they're reading it in quotes. So they're saying it in their own mind, I've got to find something better than this. And when they say that to themselves, that means they're actually opening themselves up for what's next.
Now, Chris, I got a question for you, because I see the team, you know, runs the questions by me before they ask them to you to figure out which ones are what order to put them in and all that. One of the questions that I see coming up a lot is people are asking, you know, if they don't have results yet, what good does it do for them to tell their story? You know, if they don't have sales, if they're not doing great with, you know, they just got started themselves. I'm going to give my take on that, and you tell me if I'm correct, and then give your take if you would.
Sure.
My take is, I have found that the guys and gals who started from nothing and went to, you know, the people whose names we know, okay, they just shared their story. Now, some of them might have, like, you know, kind of exaggerated and given some results or something, but most of them just shared their story. Like they got into a car crash, they didn't know what they were going to do because they couldn't do their job anymore, and then they started doing this other thing. To me, just that communication of I started doing this other thing, and that sort of just being the light at the end of the tunnel, and this made me feel better. You don't necessarily have to have results, because in the case of like Empower Network or a company that already has results, you can use the results that we have, and there's all kinds of people to point to show how well they're doing in their business and all that. What are your thoughts just in general, because I see like 5 questions about this coming through, on if a person doesn't have results, what good does it do for them to tell their story? If you could just...
Absolutely. Well, this is perfect, and I think you're smart enough to like perfectly time this in at the right time, Mars, because I know you know where I'm going with this.
Like I said, I'm mostly just lucky. I'm just mostly lucky.
The next slide really does segue into what really answers that. And before I get there, it really is, it comes down to this, guys. This is what you really need to understand. And if you're asking that question, that normally means that there is a shift that needs to happen for you, and this is probably why you don't have all the results you want yet in your business. You see, a lot of people think that they have to have results in order to get results. And you look at the producers and you're like, well, how did they get there? Well, it's kind of the chicken or the egg thing. It's kind of like, well, how do you think the person who started with nothing had results? How do you think they got a result? You don't have to have a result in order to tell someone else's story that does have a result and then bridge it back to you in order for this to work. I did it for months and months with no success story. And I didn't talk about results. I talked about other people's results.
Right. That's important.
So it's very important for people to understand that, like, this whole thing about I have to have a result. No, that's because you see a bunch of scheming marketers out there always pasting their results all over the place, and so, which is like they're celebrating it, and all of a sudden someone goes, oh my God, if you can do that, I can do that, because it works well for getting leads and getting people to respond to you. But the issue is people get brainwashed into thinking that that's what they have to do, and all of a sudden they go, oh my God, I look at the person who brought me in and they had results, so that means I have to have results, but shit, I don't have results, so I'm fucked. No. No, it's not like that at all. It's because I'll tell you right now, I'm going to bring this into the next slide, and you guys are going to see this. You're going to friggin' love this. For those of you who think you have to have a result, and some of you are even resorting to like lying or exaggerating or really bending the truth as much as possible, then you're going to love this next part, because you don't have to do that shit anymore. All right? The journey of discovery. This is where you go on that journey. This is the same thing in any movie where the heroes, like, we got to go we got to go slay the dragon at the top of the mountain and get the princess back. The whole thing, think of all of those movies like that. So this is really how you discovered the solution or the secret, whatever you want to call it, right? So what happened on this journey? That normally says something like, for most people, it's like, and then I got an email from this guy who was telling me about how he could do this and this, these benefits, and I wanted to know how. And this person's name, and for me, I used Dave. I was like, and my buddy Dave sent me this email, which was true. He sent me this email, and he had me go watch this like 45-minute, hour-long webinar about how to do blogging and how to set up a blog and do blogging, and how he was getting all these leads from it. And I was like, and I was mesmerized, and I learned that I could do blogging and get leads and sell information online and sell stuff. I could sell my MLM through blogging. It was insane. I watched him do it. He literally did it. And he had all of these things. He had the free time. He had the income coming in. He had all these things. Well, you see right there, people, the whole results thing, it doesn't have to be you. You see, there's a part of the person's brain that has to have the proof, the testimonial, the part that says, okay, here's the proof that it works. But it doesn't mean you have to have that proof.
Nailed it, dude. You just nailed it. And so that's one of the things I want everybody to understand. Because I was going to say it if you didn't say it, but you said it for me. When we give out the bridge video template script and keynote slides next week, that's the way that it's built. Meaning, we're talking about proof in the video, or you're talking about proof, but you don't have, there's a spot in there for you to put your proof if you have some, like results-oriented proof right after you tell your story, but you don't have to. You don't have to, because people just need to know that it works. they don't need to know necessarily that it's worked for you yet. So what it is it's sort of like a like a springboard to get you off the ground. And what you just said is important. With a company like EN, you actually have all these. I mean, EN has the most proof of anything I've ever actually helped market.
Oh, it's all over the place.
It's like I can go out and find. And if I say this all the time, but like if I tell the team I need somebody, they have to have long hair. It's got to be blonde, but they have to have a black streak in it, and I need them to be making at least $5,000 a month. They're literally somebody in Empower Network. Well, that actually sounds like an Empower Network avatar, but there literally is someone in Empower Network that I can find that actually is doing that because there's that much proof. So you have the luxury of being able to borrow proof as you're telling your story and as you're sort of delivering your marketing materials. I'm going to back out, Chris, because Michelle's got, I think, she's got a bunch of questions, but at least 4 that I can see coming your way if you're ready to handle them. Go for it, Michelle.
Go for it.
All right. We do have a bunch of questions again. So the first one comes, let me find it here. It comes from Pamela, and I'm sure a lot of people are wondering this. What if you have a ton of stories, not just one? How do you decide where to start with what to share?
Okay, perfect question. So the real question you need to be asking yourself is what is relevant to the audience that you're telling the story to? And so when you ask yourself these questions back here, like in number 1, setting the stage, what was the biggest problem for you in your life before you started your business? Think about your avatar, the person you want to attract. If you're a mechanic, you may want to start talking about things and relevant parts about your life that mechanics can relate to. If you're a corporate executive, then you have a different set of problems and a different set of solutions and a different set of things that you're dealing with in your life, and even a different way you speak and verbiage and everything that you say that is different. And so it's a matter of lining up who you're going to talk to. And just like you're having a one-on-one conversation with someone at a barbecue and they're like, hey, well, how do I do this thing? And normally you ask them a few questions like, well, what's your deal? Like what is it you want to learn? Why do you want to learn it? What is it that you're looking at here? You're trying to find out what they need. And so you're essentially doing this automatically and you're deciding the audience for yourself. And you're like, okay, well, what were the biggest problems in my life? Of course you have more than one. And this is the great thing. I've told like 10 different versions of one story, and then I've told like 7 or 8 different stories of different events that happened, and I've mixed them together of different events and different things and played with it. And that's the good news. I mean, this is how I've done all my marketing, guys. This is how I've made multiple 6 figures, over $250,000 in this company is from telling stories and doing exactly this. And a big portion of it, I got to 5 figures a month, without talking about results.
That's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on, because everybody focuses on the wrong thing. They see people, the easy path is to focus on your results. And if you got them, flaunt them, you know what I mean? But that's not the only path,
Well, and see, the thing is that I want to make really clear here is that just like in my
Chris, can I get you to flip your camera back on, dude, so we can see your beautiful blue eyes since you're answering questions now?
Especially since we've even had questions come in about your blue eyes. You can thank Paul for that.
It wasn't for me this time, Chris. I know normally it's me that's asking questions about your beautiful blue eyes, but not this time.
I'm still blaming you for it. So the real thing here to wrap up with this is like, guys, I told Dave's story. I was like, look, my buddy Dave had all of these things. He was making all of this money. He had this type of lifestyle. And then I made this little quote, and I said to myself, quote, I wanted that. End quote. And that person just saw that and they said that to themselves like, shit, I wanted that too. I want that. And so then the next part is, let me show you what he taught me. And that's when you get to the next part, which is the revelation of what you learned and what you taught and your outline. And that at that point, you're the messenger. You're not the message. This is the biggest shift for everyone. You're not the message. You're writing the message as a messenger. Don't make this about you. Build a bridge and get over yourself. This ain't about you. All right?
Nicely said. Michelle, Michelle hit him with the next question because it ties together with it.
Yeah. Well, guys, essentially, real quick here, guys, it's simply this, okay? Because I've had, you guys know my story. I'm real with everyone. I always say now, if I like you, I'm nice to you. If I love you, I'm real with you. And essentially, I love everybody. So I'm going to be real with people. So tonight, if you can't take me saying, hey, build a bridge and get over yourself, then you probably shouldn't be doing this business. But if you take it from a place of, hey, maybe that might be true. And if it's not, then don't take it personal because it's not you and you know that. But if some of you go, wow, maybe I've been making this about myself, and that is so much freaking pressure. Why would you do that? Why? I go snowboarding most days. I don't want to go deal with all this. I go tell other stories. Now I tell my story because it's easy. But it's because it's easy. Take the path of least resistance here, please.
You know how come people do that, Chris?
What?
Dave and I actually studied the same martial arts growing up, Shotokan karate, and
So did I. Same
sweet.
teacher as Dave.
Oh, okay. Well then, I'd like to see you guys get into like a knockdown drag out. You know what I mean? Let's get it on. Sometimes I will pay you guys $5 a piece for that. The winner gets an extra 10. So I don't know if you noticed, but in karate, right? People come in and rather than working from where they're at, right? They think that they have to be, you know, what the black belts are, with the first, second, third, fourth dawn black belts, and they can do all these things rather than learning the basic movements, rather than getting those patterns down and getting the katas, the forms down, and realizing that at some point those black belts, those high-level black belts, including the master of the sensei, had to do all that stuff too. So what you just said about be the messenger is really, really important. Don't worry about, like, you're not going to be a black belt overnight. You know, deliver your story as best as you can, and then tie it together with another story that's equally compelling. It doesn't have to be all about you. That's so important, and almost everybody makes that same mistake. I've got to like tell just my story instead of bridging from their story into an even more impactful story until they have a bigger story to tell, until they themselves are a black belt, so to speak. So, Michelle, hit him with the next question if you would, because I just some of the stuff you're saying is why you're such a fucking genius at what you do, man. I mean, like, it's be the messenger. You know what I mean? You're not the message. You're the messenger is really, I mean, that's the walk away for me from the night. And I forget that all the time too. Like, I think, oh, I got to tell this story about myself. And sometimes people don't care about me. They just want whatever story is going to motivate them and inspire them and get them to the next level. They need those things. We all need those things, you know? So, Michelle?
Awesome. Sure. So the next question is from Joe. He asked, what Empower program has your favorite lessons around storytelling and sharing? What would you recommend people study next for this?
Oh my God. You know, honestly, I had a unique experience here simply because of the position I was in. But I will tell you, I loved when I did the Inner Circle interviews, and I got to actually always listen to the leaders' stories. I would always ask them their story first, and then I got to listen to them, and I learned how they told their stories. And I would go back and listen to my own recordings, kind of vain at the time, I know. But I'd go back and listen to them, and people would like, you know, I would realize what they were saying, and I would start to understand why certain leader stories work so well and why others, you know, didn't so well. But hearing those stories, I started to toy with and go like, okay, that was inspirational. I want to go hear that again, you know. And the interview I did with Rob Force specifically, like, it was like a 3-hour marathon. I still have people that come to me and are like, I still listen to that thing to this day. Mm-hmm. And it's like, that was 3 years ago, you know? And so I learned that stories were so important. And so, yeah, it really is the inner circle. So the older ones that are still so relevant where leaders are telling their stories, just listening to them. And if you follow these notes and this outline and listen to their story and go like, okay, these 5 things, what's their struggle? What's their discovery? What are they teaching me? You know, if you just listen to that stuff, you're gonna be like, oh my God, that's how I do it.
You know, that's interesting because when we first got ready to jump on the Hangout, I don't know if you were watching chat in the page, but what were they talking about? Elena's call from last night at Inner Circle and how inspirational and encouraging it was, specifically the story she shared. So that's really cool that that's the one you picked to recommend.
I'm just going to say one thing, and thank you, Michelle. That's cool. It's really good that you brought that up because it's really this is what I like to always say. I say this when I'm coaching people and my team and everything because it's just funny. But it's like we talk about this stuff, and just like this point about the inner circle, I'm like, this shit ain't rocket science. It's stories. All right, so you know, I'm going to be real here. That's how I am. So.
So Chris, we have a couple more questions, and then we got about for a 90-minute broadcast, we got about another 15 minutes probably after that. I just like to let you wrap up. If you got an extra punchline to what you already taught, but other than that, I personally would like to have a dialogue with you to sort of segue into next Tuesday's Tactical Tuesday when we're going to release the bridge video formula and the script and the keynote deck.
I have like 5 to 7 minutes on my slides, and I'm done, and then. You know,
all right. So, Michelle, hit him with a couple more questions, and then we'll let him wrap it up, and then I'll just ask him a couple questions on the way out.
Cool. Okay, so two more questions here. Let's see. Diane asks, when you're developing your story, how do you decide what to share? So which pieces are important and which pieces aren't?
Well, it really comes down to when I'm sharing a story, I'm going through and looking at those questions that I'm giving you guys tonight, and I essentially write my story out without ever following any formula at first, and I just write it. And then I go back and I look at the parts and I ask myself the question, where's that struggle? Where's that turning point? Where's that defining moment for me? And I go to the journey of discovery, like, okay, what happened specifically? Did I get a call? Did I get an email? Where did I see this? I saw an ad. What was it? And I ask myself, what did I really learn? And so I take one element of each of those questions, and I don't, because some people just want to be heard and they want people to know their story, so they'll tell like 3 or 4 crises in their story, and it takes them like 5 pages before they get to their journey of discovery. And that's not going to work either, because it's not about you, remember? It's about establishing trust that's most relevant to the people you're attempting to reach. So, Diane, hopefully that helps.
Got it. All right, so one more question. And this one is from Sandra. Can you give us an example? You talked about earlier sharing other people's results. How do you tie that into your own story when you're sharing?
Absolutely. Well, I talked a little bit about it before, but it's essentially like as I used, and all of you know Dave's story, and I essentially said, look, here's what happened. I got this email from Dave. He sent me this thing. I watched it, and he showed me there. I was mesmerized. And then I talk about all of the things he had. He was making a lot of money. He had the lifestyle and the freedom I wanted. He could go where he wanted to, travel where he wanted to, have all the free time. He had inner peace. He was stress-free. That's the kind of lifestyle I wanted. And I was determined. Now, this is one of those first-person statements that is like, I wanted that. I was determined to learn what he had. I wanted to learn what he had. And then I asked him, and he taught me, and he showed me this. Now I'm about to show you what he taught me. And that segues into the next part that I was just going to show you guys real quick on the slides.
Perfect.
Perfect, man.
Right. So
I got to tell you, dude, you are a badass. I always get nervous because if I'm the one that's like, hey, we should do this thing, because not everybody agrees with the Mars mindset. And I have worked with you, so I knew that you're going to deliver. But even still, every now and again, things don't work out. But the audience is loving this, dude, and you're nailing it. So thanks again for coming on, and go ahead and close us out.
Right on. So the journey of discovery, just to finish here, this last little part for you guys is if you want to write these questions is, if I'm still talking about, like my story with Dave and I'm like, here's my experience of Dave. A lot of you are like, I have a boring story. No, you don't. I sat on a curb and said something to myself and then sat on a curb 3 nights later and had a major realization. That's what the heck happened in my story. But it was my perspective of it that made it, wow, that's the lesson. And so the same thing happens here. In your journey of discovery, you see how I said, what did I learn? What myths were shattered? So oftentimes I talk about how, and I thought you had to go to work and get, work 40 hours or 60 hours a week to get ahead. And here I watch Dave working like 5 hours a week and, making all this money. What the heck? And sometimes he didn't work at all. And he had all this money coming in. And I wanted that. That's a myth that was shattered. Overcome objections naturally. Some people go, is this too good to be true? Is this real? And I say, now I thought it was too good to be true until I saw it with my own eyes. And now I'm going to show you what he taught me. And that is the 4th part out of 5 is the revelation. This is the breakdown. This is where you give them some meat, where they feel like you gave them value and you taught them something. And I normally would say something like, this is played out quite a bit, but it still works pretty well for new people, which is, I learned that I had to have the right mentor, the right method, and the right mindset. And the method also can be system, which, we have a great system here in Empower. And so, I'm like the right mentor. Well, that's me. Hey, I'm right here in front of you. The right method or the right system. Well, I have that plug and play for you. And the right mindset. So here's a few things you need to know about getting started. And we're going to jump on the phone when you get in and I'll tell you these things on the mindset, but you need to be open. You need to have the mindset of listening to me. If you do what I tell you, will you do it? If you listen to me and I tell you what to do, will you do it? Okay, I realized Dave asked me and told me to do those things, and I had to have the right mindset. I'm going to teach you that when you choose to learn this stuff. I say that in my story, or I say that in a video. And so that frames people really well. And so how this works thing is just like those buckets. Sometimes I'm like, look, I learned that there's these 5 things I have to learn in order to make money online. I had a way to generate traffic, lead capture page. I had to send them to an offer. then I had to follow up and, all that kind of stuff. Like, I missed one in there, but that's 4. But you know what I mean? Like, you have to give some solid, like, value and training that's like, okay, here's what I learned. Here's what you need to have. And on the next page, I'm going to give you something that gets you even deeper, that teaches you even more. Like the whole Truth or Hype video with Mars and Holly, I'm like, look, I'm gonna pass you off and walk you through something with my friend Mars and Holly, and they're gonna walk you through this method, this system that talks about a force multiplier, that talks about the growing market, the 3 things that he talks about in that video. I actually talk about in my revelation and my stories, so I'm congruent. I'm like, look, you're going to learn this from Holly and Mars about a force multiplier, about a growing market, about these things. This is what you're going to learn next, and that's what you need to know.
That, sir, is the definition of a nugget. What he just said is the definition of a nugget, because that's what you have to do to form a connective tissue between 2 things. You have to actually talk about what's in it. I'm sorry for jumping in, but like that's a thing that almost everybody misses. If you set them up, and if they were interested enough to click through and actually go watch the video after hearing that means they're interested in that thing, so they're more likely to actually end up buying. If you say you're going to hear about thing X, Y, and Z, it's the same thing with emails. Whatever the link says in the email, if somebody clicked on it, when they get to the squeeze page, if whatever's around the link in the email is the same as what's on the squeeze page, you want it to be congruent. So you want it to be congruent from thing to thing to thing, and then whatever's on the squeeze page needs to be congruent with whatever's going to be in the VSL, or whatever's on the bridge in the bridge video needs to be congruent with what's in the VSL and sort of set it up. The video sales letter. VSL.
And I got you one even better on this, of something that it accomplishes that everyone needs to know and that is so key and so important. And it is that when you do that, when you say you're going to get this and you do it on the next exposure and you automate that, that means you are automatically building trust every step of the way. Make sure to know that. So that's important. And the last part here, referring back to the story to illustrate key points and the moral of the story. Remember, I'm just talking about how I saw Dave have all this stuff. And so I'm saying, like, look, the right mentor. Well, Dave became my mentor, and he showed me how to do this. You see, I'm referring back to the story to teach, which anchors in the teaching for people, so they remember it. I'm teaching through a story. The right system. Well, he had this system put together. He let me plug into it. I started to make money from it, or he was making money from it. Other people were making money from it, I'm telling him, referring back to the story. So that's the revelation. So then the last part here, once you have taught and given some value and they feel like, wow, I've just been taught and like schooled here, then the call to action, which is setting the proper expectation for the next exposure, which is exactly what Mars just did. He's literally ahead of me, like all the time, perfectly timed. And the justification, like I'm like, look, guys, I'm sick and tired of seeing people who struggle just like me, and I now have a way to help you, and so this is why I'm giving this to you, and so you can help yourself do this just like I did. And I'm going to give you, what these people taught me. And introducing the sales message in the person of authority. Like I said, I'm going to introduce you to Mars and Holly, and they're going to walk you through this system that has these 3 things in it, and you're going to learn all about why you need it. And then normally, if this is on my blog, which, engagement mechanisms, if this is on Facebook, I say, hey, leave comments below, ask questions. Or if I'm on a blog post, I'm like, leave your comments below in the comments. Like, tell me, what are your thoughts? If you have any questions, let me know. I can answer them in the comments, and that's I seem like a real person and that I care, and people are like, wow, this person's even responding to me. And then the last part is, whatever the headline is of your next exposure, the Truth or Hype capture page, you just put your headline right there and make it clickable. Like, it's perfectly 100% congruent. Let me show you exactly how I did that real quick on my particular blog, my Empower Network blog, okay? I'll show you guys. Let's see here. Yep. Now, this was like, I put a picture, my story of transformation. I'm not going to go read all this, but I'm going to show you guys, like, this was like a near bankrupt realtor. I discovered these real online marketing mechanisms not found in any book. Of course, they're online, and created an income almost 5 times the average American's yearly earnings when I applied this. And then I just told my story. Look, I wasn't prepared for this. That was the setting of the stage. When it rains, it pours. That's the story of the struggle. The defining moment. The journey begins. That's my journey of discovery. My realization, which is all the things I was learning from Dave. And then what I learned, here's my breakdown, the 5 things you need. And then check this out right here. The 3 other things, you need these 3 other things: a growing market, a force multiplier, the right timing. When you combine them all together in the right process, which I have a video for you that shows you how, you have a real chance. My gift to you, if you're reading this, this is why I want to give this to you. Click here to watch my friend Mars and Holly break down and illustrate exactly how this whole thing works. We'll see you on the inside.
Damn, that's good, dude.
I have built my whole freaking business just like this in different forms through videos, blog posts, Facebook posts, social media posts. That's it, guys.
That is the model, and I'm not saying this to edify you. I'm being 100% legit here. That is the model of exactly how to write a blog post. They don't all have to be that way, but that is the model of how to write a blog post that tells your story, somebody else's story, and then segues into an offer. And that makes people it feels like a natural extension of the story. You know, I just I want to, dude. I just asked Tara in the private thread that we have with the team to make sure that we hook you up with Travis and have you do a nice lengthy session, because we only had 90 minutes tonight. Like I say, everybody's loving it, but there's always limited time, not enough time to do all the things that we want to do. I just want to do a little back and forth with you, and then I want to give you a chance to kind of close it out with a story. So I cued you for that instead of blindsiding you like 5 minutes from now, so your brain's thinking about what story you want to end with. I just want to tell you that you know, as we've gotten a chance to work together, because Chris lives in Denver, near Denver, and I live in Broomfield, which is just north of Denver. But we've had a chance to work together now, and I've gotten a chance to see him not just you know, the functionality of what he does, but he's a totally empathic person, meaning he picks up on people's vibes and can synthesize that and then give them back what they need. So to me, that's one of the things that's interesting about what you said about your story of giving people what they need versus just what they want. And the gal who gave you that advice. But I want to tell you a quick story about him, and this will be real quick, and then I want you to wrap it up, and why I really wanted to get him on. There was a girl, a young lady. I can't remember what her name is right now, because it's like the Korean gal. What was her name? Yeah, Jiyoung. Okay, so Jiyoung was there. She was at the studio. We had a bunch of chairs set up so people could watch Chris as he was developing his product, which I highly recommend. We're not here to sell other people's products, but I highly recommend his product. I'm just going to do it against the grain of what I'm supposed to do, what I'm not supposed to do, because I don't care, because it was that good. But Jiyoung was sitting there for the whole time, never uttered a peep, never even a word during the entire thing. She was nodding her head and whatnot. But during the broadcast, which was, I guess, maybe like a 4-hour broadcast, had a bunch of people on, and Chris was training them. And at the end of it, I just couldn't help it, because she was the only one that didn't say a word during the entire broadcast. And she had a beautiful smile. So I walked over to her, and I said, you know, introduced myself. I said, what's your name? Actually, she came over to me and asked me for a hug at the end, was what it was. And then I said, I didn't even know you could talk, because you just now, this is the first time I've heard you talk, right? So I asked her what her story was, and she told me, this will tell you the how attractive and compelling a good story is, and how good what Chris is teaching, how valuable what Chris has taught you tonight is, and then what he'll also teach as part of what he adds to the All-In library. She said that she was living in, I don't know if it was Germany or Korea, because her husband was German, but it was someplace. It was Korea. Okay, so she's over in Korea. She sees a webcast with Chris and Amy. Here's a story, okay? And Chris is telling stories, and Amy's telling stories as part of the setup for this mastermind that they had. What was the name of that mastermind, Chris? The one that you did?
Next Level Mastermind.
Yeah, the Next Level Mastermind. So he did this Next Level Mastermind thing, and just as kind of an experiment, I think. And Jiyoung said she saw and heard the story, and literally, I think she put in her order, and actually, you guys were actually sold out. But she got her order in in time.
He found a link I forgot about that was still live, and bought and got on a plane and sent me a message saying, I'm getting on a plane flying from Korea. And I'm like,
yeah. So that, if that doesn't say it all, some girl who had never met Chris before, never even heard of him, okay, never heard of him or Amy, heard their stories, got on a plane, bought from a hidden link, and then basically Chris had to make an extra slot for her. But I asked her what it was that she.
It was a $3,000 event, dude. That was like a high end. We make room for you. We have all this stuff going on. We're buying your meals, and she it was all ready. It was all ready to go, and then she bought it. And I'm like, we have one more.
But that's the only way that you sell something that's really high ticket. Like anything over like $47 or $100 has to be done with a story, man. It has to be done with story proof and all the other things you've listed. But it can only actually be done that way, because for someone to trust you in a virtual setting enough to part with, part with, $1,000 or more or $500 or more, they have to just basically believe in you, man. And in order to believe in you, what you have to do is communicate a genuine story. So that to me is the power of it. This girl flew over from Korea, sight unseen, man. Parted with a lot of money to be part of it. And then she came back as a visit and then was sitting there in my studio. So I know she got a lot out of it. I just wanted to say that because, a lot of times it's hard to talk about our own proof and what we've accomplished. I know I have a hard time with that, but that said everything to me. The look in her eye about how what you taught her, it literally changed her life and changed her mind. So I hope everybody got a lot out of this broadcast. Chris, I'm going to let you close out with a final story. And I really appreciate you coming on and sharing this and being so generous and, just doing your thing, man.
Absolutely, man. Well, I mean, it's my honor to share, really, and I feel like this message is really important that people need to hear. And the greatest thing is that, I had a chip on my shoulder before all of this in my story, and I was cocky at times, and I made it about me. And I always had people coming up to me at the event saying, you have so much potential. You have so much potential. You're capable of so much. I had my sponsor in my other company when me and Dave were building our other company a while ago. We were at a company event, and we were walking across the street into the event, and she said to me, she put her arm around me, and she said, I don't understand you're not crossing the stage because you have more potential in one pinky than I have in my whole body. And I remember, and there was a part of me that was kind of like, well, I know, but I was comfortable. And this is what I'm getting at. I was comfortable being the one full of potential and capable of all of these great things. And I could talk about it going, you know what? Yeah, I could do all these things. I could do this. I could. I'm capable of it, full of potential. But I was never really being real with myself in the moment and taking a look at myself and going, okay, what's real current reality right now? Am I living up to that? And how much of a waste is it really that I'm wasting all of that talent and potential by just being comfortable in potential? And what I found is that I had not yet shifted my mind into shifting out from always dominantly focusing on what I didn't want to dominantly focusing on what I do want. And you see, this is the one thing in the email that you guys saw with that bullet point that said the one tell that talks about whether or not someone's going to make it in this industry or not. And I've seen it hundreds of times. I see it with people on my team all the time. And I know because it's an average of 47 days, they're either make that shift or they don't. And it comes down to this. When I have conversations with them and I ask them, what is it that you want? Where are you at? What do you need? And they always talk about the things that they got to get over and the things that they don't want in their life. And when it's been past a month and a half, they're still talking about it. And I know every single time after that, it's only a matter of days, and they're gone. They don't even renew for the third month or for the second month because they haven't shifted their mindset. Because in order to be in this business, you're an entrepreneur, and it takes a different value set. I teach this stuff in my other stuff. Is it takes a different value set to shift from always dominantly focusing on what you don't want, which is the average person comes home and like, fuck, I want to forget about all that and drink beer and watch TV because I'm so stressed out, right? And you focus on, okay, no, what am I going to spend my time doing in my spare time, moving towards what I want? See, the focus is not on, oh, I'm mad about what I don't like in my life. It's, okay, that's where I want to go. Let me move towards it. And when I have conversations with certain people and I ask them what they need and what they want in their life and their coaching and in their business, they're like, well, I want this. I want to do this and I want to do this. And I'm moving towards this and I want to do this by this amount of time. And this is why I want it. And the why is real. You see, I saw that with some people who've eventually become and learned to become six-figure earners in this business that I sponsored personally and brought up. They never had any success. Like Landon, same thing. Never had any success in any company. Came in here. I helped him there, but I saw from the beginning he had that mindset. He was going to get there. All I had to do was guide him. I taught him story stuff. He's used story stuff to make multiple six figures in this industry, in this company and others, and doing other stuff and selling info products and everything online. And he did it from what I taught him, and he'll tell you that. And other people have done the same. I've had other five-figure income earners that use stories to do their business. Amy, she uses those too in all the stuff that she does, mostly through videos.
Yeah, she's good. She's really good.
Yeah. And so all I'm saying is this really comes down to that mindset of, okay, get over the fact that whatever you're not liking or mad about and want to move away from, that's great. Now you know what you don't want. Stop focusing on it and shift into, and every day this is not the glamorous part, but this is the part that makes all the difference, whether you're going to be in this industry long term and you're going to take this to the next level, you're going to make this a full-time income, real income that you can have, and it's focusing on what you do want and not allowing the thing that you don't want to get your energy down, your focus down, and all those things, because it adds up and then you destroy yourself. So it's a major shift. Always go, oh, wait a second, I'm focusing on what I don't want. Shift to what you do want. That's how you'll survive, and that's how you'll thrive in this industry. It's the biggest message I can give you. And last thing, so I talked about system-based stuff versus vision-based stuff. Here's the thing. The last couple of years, this industry has moved towards everyone's like, hey, use a system, use a system. I agree. We should. But some of the forgotten skills is stories. You see, my stories are vision-based. I have a vision of where I've been and where I'm going. I'm painting a vision, painting a picture. And some people are like, oh, systems versus personality, what's better? Just go use this system. Well, the systems we need, okay? But my argument, which is different from most people are like, oh, you only need the system. Or no, you can only be the guru and be the guru on the mountaintop and be a big personality, but no one can duplicate you, which is right. What I say is shift from that and call it system versus system and vision together, and you use your vision to paint a picture for people to come in and tie them to a system. You need both. It's not an if, either, or. It's a both where you have your vision tied to a system, and that's when you automate that you become a top producer. Right there in a nutshell, that's what I can give you, and I'm done.
That was a perfect setup for what I got to say at the end, because I am CMO of Empower Network. And right now, you're somebody out there who hasn't joined Empower Network yet. And or you joined recently and you haven't gotten all in, all right? And benefits wise, we are going to put something from Chris. There's all kinds of good stuff in the all in library. We've just been building it up. It's a lot of tactical stuff that we put in there. We do private sessions with people. But if you've been sitting here for the last hour and a half and you either haven't clicked the get in button because you're not part of Empower Network yet, or you've been sitting here wondering whether or not you should get all in, okay, I'm giving you a call to action. Okay, you've been sitting here for 90 minutes. There's at least a handful of people out there who are going to connect with what I'm saying right now. Okay, you've been sitting here for 90 minutes. You're on the fence about, well, should I try this out or should I not try this out? Should I get all in? Should I not get all in? I'll tell you right now, what Chris said about not focusing on what you don't want, focus on what you do want. Okay, and live your life that way. Focus on what you do want right now and make a decision, whether it's just to get in to Empower and try it out. There's no risk because you can get out if you want without losing anything. But also, same thing for getting all in. There's a window coming up here on Friday that'll close out your discount, because we do a discount for new members. Don't be shy. Focus on what you do want. Okay, make a decision, because that's really the extra step. Once you decide what you want, is to actually make a decision about it, and then finally to take action on that. Right. So right now, all I'm going to do is I'm going to just tell you, make a decision and either get in or get all in if you're not all in. And I'm going to end with thanking Chris Rochleau. Mr. Rochleau, I think you are a 100% true American badass, and I love you, man. I really do, and I know everybody else loves you, because almost everybody stuck around for the whole show, man, the whole Dog and Pony show. So again, if you're all in already, we're going to put this and then an entire expanded version of this into the all-in library for you guys, including the slides or a PDF version of the slides, or whatever. And then if you're not all in, do get all in and try it out, because there's some really kick butt stuff in there. And it's about more than just owning a bunch of products. It's about making a decision. Everybody who makes it gets all in. So I'm going to end with that. Mr. Rochleau, you got any parting thoughts? Michelle, you got any parting thoughts before we wave goodbye to these people?
I do. I got one last thing for everyone. And, this is really the core essence of my message, because, like I said, I'm a messenger. I'm not always attempting to be the message. But my message to you is actually this. I see a lot of people come in this industry, and they go, okay, what do I do? I have to be like my sponsor. I have to be like the person who taught me or brought me in. And so they attempt to go and copy people. And then on top of that, they essentially think they have to be like that person rather than being themselves. What I just did for you tonight is illustrate how in 2 years, over the last 2 years of my business, I've created over $250,000 from being real, not making it about me, and referring to the authority and credibility that's better than me most of the time, when I don't even have to anymore, because I don't want to put all that on my shoulders. So what this really comes down to is this. Isn't it nice that finally you don't have to go and be someone you're not, or have to learn this schemy, salesy copywriting and trying to mislead people and hype people and give them this stupid thing like, hey, make my $500 a day formula, or something like that, which, you know, we all know everyone's results are unique and everyone's different and unique, so it works different for everyone. And how about you stop making this about you and you be real and you be a part of the solution of this industry rather than the problem. And the problem in this industry is so many people run around touting that, hey, make money, make money, make money, make money, 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 money all the time. And they don't give any real value or uniqueness or personality to themselves that ties in with a real vision that rallies people. And all you have to do is tell your story and get better at telling your story. And I've told my story so many times over that it's made me 6 figures multiple times over. The choice is yours. Are you a part of the problem or are you a part of the solution? Are you going to be a part of the noise? Or are you going to be a part of the uniqueness in the solution that can still tie into a proven system that works for you? And we have that in Power Network. That's what I got for you all. Honored to be here. Thank you for being here. We'll see you all at the next event.
Bam. Close her out, Steve. Bye, everybody. See you next on Thursday.